I awoke with a gasp, jolted from a dream I couldn't quite recall, but one that left me with a lingering sense of unease. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the otherwise silent room. It was the 22nd of May, 2025, a date that would forever be etched in my memory, a line of demarcation between what was and what would never be again. I stumbled out of bed, drawn by an inexplicable pull, a sense that something profound had shifted. I walked to the window, and that's when I saw it. A world transformed, irrevocably altered. The air was thick, heavy, humid, unnaturally warm, stifling even for what should have been a crisp spring morning. It felt like stepping into a sauna, a tangible weight pressing down on everything. Outside, a heavy, almost impenetrable mist blanketed the landscape, obscuring familiar landmarks, turning the world into a blurry, indistinct watercolor painting. And the usual morning chill, the refreshing coolness that typically greeted the dawn, was completely gone, replaced by a cloying, oppressive warmth. Puddles, large and shimmering, dotted the ground, reflecting the strange, hazy light, as if a warm, torrential rain had fallen silently, relentlessly all night long. The silence was unsettling, a profound, almost deafening quiet that pressed in from all sides. Only a strange, persistent dripping, an incessant patter of water filled the air, a constant reminder of something melting, dissolving, disappearing. Then the news reports crackled to life, voices filled with disbelief, with a sense of impending doom. The unthinkable had happened. All the ice on Earth, gone, vanished, as if it had never existed. It had occurred overnight, a cataclysmic shift that defied all logic, all scientific understanding. Glaciers, those ancient rivers of ice, polar caps, the frozen crowns of our planet, permafrost, the permanently frozen ground that held the secrets of millennia, melted in a single, impossible event, unleashing untold consequences. Scientists, the guardians of knowledge, struggled for answers, poring over data, running simulations, desperately seeking a rational explanation. But the evidence, stark and irrefutable, was undeniable, a terrifying testament to the fragility of our world. The world as we knew it had irrevocably changed in a single night, transformed into something alien and frightening. Dread settled in, a suffocating blanket heavier than the humid air, a palpable sense of impending catastrophe. What did this mean for us, for our families, for our future? For the planet, for the delicate balance of nature that sustained us all. This was not just an isolated event, a fleeting anomaly. It was the end of the world we knew, the shattering of everything we had taken for granted, and the beginning of something terrifyingly new, a future shrouded in uncertainty and fear. The great thaw had arrived, not as a gradual shift, a slow and predictable change, but with the suddenness of a nightmare, a swift and brutal awakening to a new reality. Nothing would ever be the same. The world had crossed a threshold and there was no turning back. The Arctic, once a realm of perpetual winter, a landscape sculpted by ice and snow, now stood transformed. The very essence of this polar region, its icy grip on the world's climate, was loosening. Once a frozen kingdom, a vast, white expanse stretching to the horizon, a testament to the power of nature's deep freeze, was rapidly changing. Decades of accumulated ice, the foundation of a unique ecosystem, were vanishing at an alarming rate. The historical records, the stories of explorers braving the icy wilderness, were becoming relics of a bygone era. Was now open ocean, the dark, frigid waters, once hidden beneath a thick layer of ice, were exposed to the sun. Shipping lanes, previously impassable, opened up, offering new routes but also signaling a profound environmental shift. The Arctic, no longer a frozen barrier, was becoming a navigable sea. Polar bears, the iconic symbols of the Arctic, found their world shrinking beneath their paws. Seals, dependent on the ice for breeding and resting, struggled to adapt to the changing environment. Their populations dwindled as their icy habitats disappeared, and the entire ecosystem vanished with the ice. The delicate balance of life honed over millennia was disrupted. Species struggled to survive, and the Arctic food web unraveled. The silence of the empty waters spoke volumes about the loss. Antarctica's ancient ice sheets melted, mirroring the Arctic's plight, but on a grander scale, revealing land unseen for millions of years. The frozen continent, a repository of Earth's history, began to unveil its secrets, a stark reminder of the planet's changing climate. Vast quantities of fresh water poured into the oceans, diluting the salinity and disrupting ocean currents. Mountain glaciers, the world's water towers, retreated at an accelerated pace. The Himalayas, the roof of the world, lost their glistening white caps. Alps, the heart of Europe, stood naked and exposed. Andes, the backbone of South America, was stripped of their icy armor. Rockies were stripped bare. The iconic peaks, once symbols of pristine wilderness, became stark reminders of the changing climate. Rivers that fed billions dried up at their source, leaving parched landscapes and desperate communities. The scars of vanished glaciers haunted the mountains, a permanent reminder of what had been lost. Permafrost thawed instantly, releasing its long-held secrets, releasing ancient methane and carbon dioxide, potent greenhouse gases that further accelerated the warming. The ground itself became unstable, shifting and sinking beneath our feet, landscapes collapsing, swallowed by the thawing earth. Roads buckled, unable to withstand the changing ground conditions. Buildings tilted, their foundations undermined by the melting permafrost. Entire regions became treacherous, riddled with sinkholes and unstable terrain. The frozen earth had betrayed us, turning against the communities that had long depended on its stability. The world's cold heart was gone, leaving a void that reverberated across the planet. The consequences were far-reaching, impacting weather patterns, sea levels, and the delicate balance of ecosystems worldwide. The Great Thaw had begun. Trillions of tons of melted ice, once locked away in the frozen polar regions and towering glaciers, were now unleashed upon the world. The sheer volume of water was almost incomprehensible, a relentless torrent driven by the escalating global temperatures. This immense deluge surged toward the sea, a relentless river of glacial meltwater carving new paths across the land. The delicate balance of the planet was irrevocably disrupted as the frozen reservoirs of millennia were emptied into the oceans. Oceans swelled, their depths rising with alarming speed. The familiar rhythm of the tides was replaced by an inexorable surge, a creeping inundation that threatened to engulf everything in its path. Sea levels rose by meters within hours, an unprecedented event that defied all historical norms. Coastal communities watched in horror as the ocean relentlessly advanced, claiming land that had been dry for centuries. Coastlines vanished. The familiar contours of the world map began to blur and shift as the ocean asserted its dominance. Beaches, once vibrant with life, were swallowed by the encroaching waves. Islands disappeared, their low-lying shores succumbing to the relentless rise. Entire ecosystems were erased as these fragile havens were submerged beneath the waves. Water crept up beaches, a silent, insidious advance that spelled doom for coastal habitats and human settlements alike. The line between land and sea was becoming increasingly blurred. Across plains, the rising waters spread, transforming fertile farmlands into vast, shallow lakes. The agricultural heartlands of nations were drowned, threatening global food supplies. Into cities, the ocean surged, inundating streets and turning familiar landmarks into watery graves. The infrastructure of civilization crumbled under the relentless assault. The speed was terrifying, a relentless, unstoppable force that overwhelmed all defenses. The water rose with shocking rapidity, catching communities completely off guard. No time to adapt, no chance to build higher, no opportunity to reinforce defenses. The pace of the inundation left humanity reeling. No time to prepare, no chance to gather belongings, no escape from the rising tide. The suddenness of the disaster amplified the devastation. Scientists calculated their models, painting a grim picture of the future. The data revealed the terrifying scale of the impending catastrophe. Over 200 feet of sea level rise, a staggering figure that dwarfed all previous predictions. The implications were catastrophic. Maps were redrawn, borders erased, and entire nations submerged beneath the waves. The geopolitical landscape was irrevocably altered. As continents shrank, the habitable landmass of the planet dwindled, creating unprecedented competition for resources. The world was becoming a smaller, more crowded place. Hundreds of millions, perhaps billions, were displaced, forced to flee their homes in search of higher ground. A global refugee crisis of unimaginable proportions unfolded. Lost their homes to the rising tide, their lives shattered by the relentless advance of the ocean. The human cost of the disaster was immeasurable. The oceans, once a source of wonder and sustenance, once life's cradle, teeming with biodiversity and supporting countless ecosystems, became a force of destruction, unleashing devastating storms and swallowing entire communities. The oceans had turned against us. No barrier could hold back the flood, no seawall strong enough to withstand the relentless pressure of the rising waters. Humanity's defenses were overwhelmed. The planet's balance was shattered, the delicate equilibrium of nature irrevocably disrupted. The consequences were felt across the globe. The blue expanses we cherished, the source of so much beauty and inspiration, now threatened everything, casting a dark shadow over the future of humanity. The very thing that sustained us now threatened to destroy us. Earth's face was forever changed, the familiar contours of the continents reshaped by the relentless advance of the sea. The world would never be the same. New York City, waves lapped at skyscrapers, Wall Street submerged. The Statue of Liberty stood forlorn, her torch barely above water. London's landmarks drowned beneath the swollen Thames. The underground became a network of saltwater tunnels. Shanghai's towers rose from a new sea, its port useless. Millions displaced, their homes and livelihoods gone. Miami, Amsterdam, Venice, lost to the flood. Kolkata, Dhaka, Tokyo, Sydney, Rio, countless cities silenced. Coastal communities became sunken graveyards. The world's great capitals, now relics beneath the waves. The lights of civilization extinguished. A modern Atlantis born of melted ice. Billions lived on coastlines. Now all were in the path of the flood. Panic erupted, families fled with what they could carry. Highways became rivers of desperate humanity. The largest migration in history began. No region was spared. Inland towns were overwhelmed by the tide of refugees. Makeshift camps sprang up on any dry land. Food, water, shelter, critically scarce. Societies strained, order frayed. Borders became meaningless as people searched for safety. Governments struggled to respond, but the crisis was overwhelming. The concept of home vanished for millions. The search for higher ground was all that mattered. Humanity was uprooted on a planetary scale. The rising seas brought a hidden threat. Saltwater invaded freshwater systems, rivers turned brackish, deltas and estuaries lost their balance, aquifers near coasts were contaminated, wells ran dry or pumped undrinkable water, freshwater lakes became saline, killing life within, wetlands and habitats vanished, devastating wildlife and people alike. The quest for drinkable water became a daily struggle. Fresh water, once abundant, became the world's most precious resource. The poisoned well was a stark symbol of our new reality. Thirst haunted the flooded earth. The ice was Earth's air conditioner. Its loss unleashed chaos. Sunlight, once reflected, now heated the planet unchecked. Ocean currents faltered, weather patterns shattered. Some regions plunged into drought, others battered by storms. Rivers dried up, landscapes turned to dust. Elsewhere, floods ravaged far from the sea. Extremes became the new normal. Blizzards in summer, heat waves in winter. Farmers could no longer predict the seasons. The climate, unchained, raged with terrifying fury. The world's weather was now a daily gamble. Coastal farmlands and river deltas, Earth's breadbaskets, were lost to the sea. Global food production plummeted overnight. Remaining farmland faced drought, floods and unpredictable weather. Saltwater poisoned soil and irrigation, crippling crops. Food became scarce, prices soared. Hunger spread like a plague. Malnutrition weakened populations, disease followed. The struggle for food became desperate and violent. The earth itself seemed to reject our attempts to grow sustenance. Famine's shadow fell across the world. The extinction crisis was immediate. Polar bears, penguins, entire ecosystems vanished. Marine life suffered as oceans warmed and currents shifted. Biodiversity collapsed at a staggering pace. Human societies fractured, governments fell, borders dissolved. New conflicts erupted over land and water. The old world order was swept away. A harsher world emerged. Scarcity, struggle, loss. Familiar landscapes were gone, replaced by new seas. Survival became the only law. In this ultimate flood, how would you adapt? How would you survive?